Hey there, friends, it's Nick. This is episode 435, I think, of the StoryHacker podcast, forgive me. And I promised I was going to talk about Jeff Bezos and how he kind of storified Amazon. Now, don't get me wrong, Amazon is obviously, well, it's a monster business, we know that. It's very, very data-driven, we know that too. But back in 2004, which is obviously 1,000 years ago in internet years, Bezos told his then senior team, his S team as he called it, that he didn't want any more PowerPoint. And the memo that I'm going to read you now, it's just a short couple of paragraphs from, is a memo that he sent in June 2004 explaining why he was making this change. So here we go. Subject: no PowerPoint presentations from now on at S team. A little more to help with the question why. Well-structured narrative text is what we're after rather than just text. If someone builds a list of bullet points in Word, that would be just as bad as PowerPoint. The reason writing a good 6-page storied memo is harder than writing a 20-page PowerPoint is because narrative structure forces better thought and better understanding of what's more important than what and how things are related. And if you think about it, yesterday we were talking about cause and effect and the power that cause and effect has in storytelling and on our brains. And what Bezos was saying, and he apparently went on Charlie Rose later. And by the way, I'm quoting here from a book called Storynomics, which I thoroughly recommend. It's about stories in business. So, as Bezos later told Charlie Rose, the traditional corporate meeting starts with a presentation. Someone gets up with a PowerPoint display, some type of slideshow. In our view, you get very little information. You get bullet points. This is easy for the presenter, but difficult for the audience. And so instead, our meetings are structured around 6-page narratives. When you have to write your ideas out in complete sentences, complete paragraphs, and tell a complete story, it forces deeper clarity. And what the book's authors go on to talk about is how, essentially Bezos was getting his executives to think. Because writing stories is hard in some respect. Writing reasonable, realistic narratives is difficult. It does force you to think, because whereas with bullet points it can be really easy to skip over some kind of logical gap. When you're really doing cause and effect, like we said yesterday, when you create there's two things. One is if you can create a powerful cause and effect kind of line, kind of like a line of dominoes going down, it's in one hand it's very hard to for the human brain to resist, and that's what we were talking about in the last podcast. But on the other hand, creating that chain of dominoes, that cause and effect line, is also difficult. It requires logic and believability at every step, right? And that's one of the reasons why if you can find a story or a movie or a TV series which has these powerful cause and effect chains, however preposterous the setting, however fantastical the world, or whether it's sci-fi or fantasy or whatever, or soap operas, classic example, we stay involved. We find it very hard to look away, and we believe it all. On the flip side, that's really hard to do. So, what he was asking his executives to do was actually think through the story that we're telling, think through all those logical chains, those cause and effect relationships. And it was a way that that he could get to some really deep insight and some really deep thinking about his business. And obviously, we know what Amazon's become. And of course, it's not just because of story, but, this is a smart man who's looking at the way that most businesses work and saying, no, that's not for me. And if maybe if we're smart, we at least take a look at this and say, okay, what did he know that we need to learn? Thanks for listening. And remember, your story means business. In the next podcast, I want to get back into systems thinking, because that's related to this. And I think so many of us in business don't appreciate how systems really work. And that leads to us spending a lot of time doing the wrong things. Anyway, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Bye now.